A woman is being stabbed to death outside her apartment building. 38 of her neighbors watch from their windows. Not one of them calls the police. That's the story that built an entire field of psychology. There's just one problem. Almost none of it is true. For 60 years, this story has been used to explain something dark about human nature, that when enough people are watching, nobody acts. It has a name now, the bystander effect. But the real story isn't about 38 cold-hearted witnesses. It's about something far stranger happening inside your brain right now, in this exact moment, whether you notice it or not. It starts on March 13th, 1964, in Kew Gardens, New York. A 28-year-old woman named Kitty Genovese was walking home from her shift as a bar manager at 3 a.m. A man named Winston Moseley followed her from the parking lot and attacked her with a knife. She screamed. Lights came on in the apartment building above her. The attacker ran off. Then, minutes later, he came back and finished what he started. 2 weeks later, the New York Times ran a story with a headline that would outlive everyone involved. 37 who saw murder didn't call the police. The article claimed 38 witnesses watched the entire attack from their windows, in 3 separate assaults over half an hour, and did nothing. Not one of them called for help until it was already over. The story exploded. It wasn't just a crime anymore. It was proof that cities made people cold, that anonymity killed empathy, that the more witnesses there are, the less anyone feels responsible. Except when researchers went back decades later and pulled the actual police records, court transcripts, and building layouts, the story fell apart. Most residents could only hear fragments of a scream in the middle of the night, not see a murder unfold outside their window like a stage play. Several witnesses did call the police, at least one before the fatal attack. A neighbor ran outside and cradled Kitty in her arms as she died. The number 38 was never verified. It came from a conversation between a police captain and a newspaper editor, and it stuck because it made a better headline than the truth did. So, the founding case of the bystander effect was, in large part, a myth. But here's the part that should unsettle you more. The psychological effect the myth accidentally inspired turned out to be completely real. 2 psychologists, Bibb Latané and John Darley, read the Genovese story and asked a different question than everyone else. Not, why are people cruel? But, what does a room full of witnesses actually do to a single person's decision to act? In 1968, they brought college students into a lab, one at a time, and told them they'd be having a group discussion over an intercom about the pressures of college life. In reality, there was no group, just a recording. Partway through, one voice on the recording, an actor playing a fellow student, started having what sounded like a seizure, choking, stammering, calling for help, then silence. When the participant believed they were the only other person listening, 85% of them left the room to get help, almost immediately. When they believed there was one other listener besides themselves, that dropped. When they believed 4 other people were also listening in, it dropped again, all the way down to 31%. Nearly 7 out of 10 people sat there doing nothing while they believed someone was dying on the other end of that intercom. They weren't cold. Follow-up interviews showed the opposite. Their hands were shaking. Their palms were sweating. They looked distressed, agitated, torn. They just didn't move. And the more people they believed were also listening, the less likely any single one of them was to act. Latané and Darley gave the mechanism a name: diffusion of responsibility. When you're the only witness, the entire weight of the emergency lands on you alone. When you believe others are watching too, your brain quietly does the math without asking you. Somebody else will probably handle it. And if everybody's brain runs that same math at the same time, nobody moves at all. But diffusion of responsibility wasn't the whole story either. In a separate study, Latané and Darley filled a waiting room with smoke while a participant sat filling out a questionnaire, sometimes alone, sometimes surrounded by strangers who had secretly been told to ignore it. Alone, 75% of people got up and reported the smoke within minutes. Surrounded by people calmly doing nothing, that number collapsed to 10%. Some participants sat in a room visibly filling with haze, rubbing their eyes, and still didn't move. They weren't just diffusing responsibility, they were reading each other's calm faces as information. If nobody else looks alarmed, maybe this isn't actually an emergency. Everyone in that room was privately afraid, and everyone was publicly performing calm, and the group ended up more blind than any single person in it. Psychologists call this pluralistic ignorance, a room full of people individually terrified, collectively convinced that nobody else is. This isn't a 1964 problem. It's running inside you every day. It's why a phone gets stolen on a crowded train and 30 people watch it happen. It's why a comment section can watch someone get torn apart online and nobody says a word in their defense, even people who privately think it's wrong. It's why a collapsed cyclist can lie on a busy sidewalk for minutes while people detour around them, each one assuming someone else already called for help. Every one of those bystanders would tell you they care. They're not lying. Their heart rate is up. Their palms are sweating, just like the students in that lab. The failure isn't in their conscience. It's in a piece of ancient wiring that quietly recalculates your personal responsibility every time another set of eyes enters the room. Kitty Geneviese's real neighbors weren't the monsters the headline made them out to be. Most of them heard almost nothing, and some of them did try to help. The myth was wrong about them, but it was right by accident about the rest of us. There is a version of you that becomes less likely to help exactly when help is needed most, and the only thing that seems to break the spell is knowing it's there. So, the next time you're in a crowd and something's wrong, don't wait to see what everyone else does. Everyone else is waiting too.